I think it's important for me to start with this idea about being a master teacher. Like, I don't want to be anything else but a teacher. And people really struggle with that. Like, I feel like that's a big challenge we have of like, oh no, you're supposed to go up and be the assistant principal. Why you're not the principal yet? You don't want to, no, I want to be a teacher. I do my best work. I'm the best version of myself in my classroom. And I really had to fight for that, right? Like, because all the things on the resume is somebody else kind of telling me, oh, you should come do it. Or another challenge that we face as Black educators is I've had to come into a role to fix some things, fix some people's wrongs, right? And I'm like, I don't want to have to do that. So I'm really, really focused on just, I want to be an old lady Black teacher, right? That's why I'm a teacher, because Miss Walton was a production. That girl was fly every day. When our school switched over to uniform, she would wear a grown-up version of the uniform, go in the cloakroom and write a song and have us on the stage doing an assembly the next day, and school just felt like a production to me. And so I want to be that. I think having a curious mind has sustained me as a scholar, and being able to facilitate that for kids in my city means everything to me. And so that's the piece. I will never not be teaching. I think what I have learned over time is that I can extend the craft and the science and all the expertise I have in teaching to also teaching adults. I think that's the next phase of this journey, is like teaching adults, because I think there is a gap in people really respecting teaching as a craft, right? Like, you have to really put the work in to do it well, because we're transferring knowledge. We're not just up here laughing and giggling or managing kids. And I think a lot of what school, especially school in DC, has become is rooted in management. It's not rooted in growth. And when we were kids, right, like, school was rooted in growth. That's why we all loved it so much. That's why we wanted to be there every day. And so I think a big part of that is maybe tipping into what it means to teach teachers. So my work with Black Girls Teach is just that we are actively working to dismantle injustices and break down some of these problematic systems, but also really just working with Black women teachers. So right now we have this contract with Urban Teachers DC, Baltimore, and Dallas. And so we facilitate a series of sessions with their Black women educators on everything from communication and advocacy to just some emotional unpacking of like what it feels like to be teaching in the middle of the pandemic. Some of the DEI work that gets missed in the larger system, right? Because everybody just assumes the DEI work is for one kind of group, and like the Black women don't necessarily need it. We need it. We have things we need to work through too. And so that's a lot of the current work. Ms. DeBose asked me a question in the emails about like, what do I feel like is the impact of my presence in the classroom? And I mean, you have to ask the kids, right? They're gonna give it to you. You ask the kids. But I think for me, I would hope that me being there is, me being a 3D version and an example of all the great things that come out of DC, right? Our kids are so talented and they're so smart. They don't even know it. They're so smart. They're so genius. They're so fly. Right? And like, I just want to be that. I want my classroom to be a production. I want to love on them in the way grown-ups loved on me when I was a kid. And I think also too, a lot of people forget that the high school kid needs that too, right? Like, everybody thinks all the lovey-dovey stuff happens in elementary school. No, they still babies too. They just kind of tall, right? They still need you to love on them. They still need you to talk to them. They live for a color-coded copy, just like everybody else. And so like, I want to create that space for them. But I also judge the impact on like the chickens that come home to roost for me, right? Like, my kids are everything from, parents and content creators to firefighters, and one of my real children is at Brown, and he just started a Black newspaper because they were having racial issues on campus. And so my kids are fighting, right? They're activists, they're thinkers, they're artists, they're creators, and they're, in my DMs and in my email telling me what they're doing, all excited, like sending me t-shirts from the line and stuff. And so like, I just feel like that those are the chickens that come home to roost for me. And I'm really proud of that. So I feel like even when it gets really tough and I want to flip some tables over and do some stunts, I just keep pressing because it's important. And I think that another part I want to make sure I talk about is just like the teaching in DC. Like, I don't want to teach anywhere else. I am 100% committed to teaching in the place where I learned, and making sure like I get to teach my friends' kids. Like that's the real hype. Like when somebody comes to my classroom and they're like, you know such and such, you went to high school with Morgan, you know my mama, girl, I know your mama, girl. We went to Whittier together. Yes, like I really enjoy that. Like I get to teach our people. All the kids are my kids. Like they're my kids. And it's important. And I really love just my family is a younger family. I'm the oldest, and so all of my siblings have been in school while I've been a teacher, and they're just so pressed to tell people that I'm a teacher. Like everywhere we go, they're real pressed. Oh, my sister's a teacher. My sister taught at Duke. I went to, yeah, did you see? Like, I'm like, be quiet. Like, when we're doing Black Girls Teach on YouTube, they're sending people the links, and they're just really proud of me. And I am just glad that I could be that for them in that way and create those systems in our city that we need. Because it's just a lot. And I also think of, because we have so many people kind of like in our system who are not from the city or of the city, we just have so many challenges that we shouldn't have to have. And that if they just asked us, right, if they just got out the way, everybody's not going to be a revolutionary. That's fine. But like, get out the way. Like, let us do it. Let us create the space so that we're revolving and not evolving. That we're really growing and we're really changing and creating space for our kids to be great. And for us, like we're really talented. I've had some of the smartest colleagues, just like downright talented, crazy, ridiculous minds next door to my classroom, right? Like talking to me at lunch. And I think our kids and the adults are just like they're equally genius, and we're just waiting for someone to just get out the way so we can take off running. And so I'm going to stay here till we run the race together. So. That's good. I'm at my time, right? I did good.
Okay, so who is the they that needs to get out of the way? And like, how would you address, like just pick one, who's the they that needs to get out of the way, and how would you communicate that to whoever that they is? To get out of our way so that our kids can continue to thrive and grow and be encouraged in their own city and in their own skin, etc. So who is the they? And how do we move out of it? What do teachers do about that? Put them on the spot.
Well, I think that they are the folks that still have to colonize and to fix mindsets, right? The folks in charge who weren't teachers before. The folks who see us as a system of management and not a space where we can create cultures of community. Like those are the they. And I think what teachers need to do is kind of what we're doing right now, just like tell the truth, say it out loud. Because I think we talk about it all the time. We all know the tea. We tell each other, but we don't always say it in the space where we need to say it, or like push back because we just want, let me just close this classroom and let me close the door, let me get the kids. I got the kids, like forget these adults. But I think we need to start saying it out loud because we have the tools and the solutions, right? Like I think once we get our fight to kind of match that, like that will, once we're more empowered to do it, we won't feel like we have to do so much, we don't have to take so much. I think we have more parents on our side than we think. And I think also us telling our stories flips a lot of those narratives. We always are told like, oh, what the kids can't do. Oh, that the mamas won't show up. That's not true. Like we just have to figure out a way to tap into it and embrace them in the way that they want to be embraced because they're there, they're waiting too. I think we can push back in that way. And in DC specifically, we have to really think about like maybe even what it means to de-school. Like how do we recreate a system or like create the system really because it's never been set up for us in the way we need. And think about like just even the structure of who gets to make decisions for us. We live in a space where the mayor is kind of at the center of our decisions and she doesn't know what we do. That's the pandemic has proved that the people don't even know what we do. They don't even know what it looks like to be in our room on a day-to-day basis. you don't even know like the gears that it takes to get it going. And so I think those are the people who really need to reassess their role in this place. And if they can't figure it out for themselves, then we just gonna have to start telling them to it, right? Like, you know, I had a principal who used to manage people. I would get teaching. I think this isn't what you want to do. Let me find you another job. Like, you got to get out because you're just in. And at this point, we all understand that like they're in the way. They're just in the way, and there's no way for us to really get to the other end. We can't tiptoe around them no more. We tried that. They got to go now.
Well, thank you very much. So that sounds like a perfect setup for EmpowerEd. That's who we are. This is a teacher voice advocacy group, and so as Tiffany was just saying, teachers need to speak up and speak out and speak truth to power. And so coming alongside and being a part of EmpowerEd to help empower the voice of teachers, the opportunity is here. It's real. I'm gonna pass the mic down to Vanessa. Señorita! Señorita Lake! Oh, yeah! Come, Señorita, yeah, come on down, let's give her a hand clap while she's okay, so Señorita is Afro Dominion. She's Dominican, pardon me. She's an author, youth advocate. I'm trying to see through these glasses. Youth advocate, entrepreneur, and experienced Spanish teacher with a demonstrated history of working in student affairs and services across different institutions in the Dominican, and also that supports holistic educational experience through fine arts, sports, digital literacy, and global exposure. And I'm going to allow Señorita Lake to take it from here. Let's give her another hand clap.
I'm a little nervous. Do you guys hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay. So, I am a diplomat by profession, but I came to DC a few years ago, and I fell in love with the DC youth because they're funny as hell. And I teach at Ward 7. In 8, and they are oftentimes forgotten about, the kids in Ward 7 and 8. I feel what you were saying. Thank you for saying what you were saying. I'm going to read. I don't think, if it rhymes, it rhymes. If you don't, it don't. But I'm going to read what I feel based on what I've experienced with my babies. I teach at CDC. So here we go. My youth lives matter to me. They matter to me, they matter to me, they matter to me. Even though sometimes principals don't understand my bond with them, even though I'm labeled as a basic teacher, in all the skills I'm trying to teach are gaps that need holistic filling. When their social skills aren't there, the academic lessons need reinventing. How can you measure my teaching technique when we are coming back from a pandemic? When the learning gap is bigger, when my heart breaks more and more from what I hear from my children. My youth lives, they matter to me. They matter to me, they matter to me. And them standardized tests, they don't measure mutual love and respect. My kids' lives, they matter to me. My youth lives, they matter to me, they matter to me, they matter to me. Even when they, as teenagers, throw 2-year-old tantrums, fight like cats and dogs, because that's been their non-method for conflict resolutions, my kids need a mentor. My youth lives, they matter to me. They matter to me, they matter to me, they matter to me. I teach in DC, Ward 7, to be specifically. I teach at the heart of the hood, where it's gated, where there is food, where there is love, where even though we know it's COVID, I know my kids need a hug. Our youth lives, they matter to me, they matter to us, they matter to us. We give our kids love, but we need to give them more than love, because our youth lives matter to us. They matter to us when they're alive. Everyone says my students' lives matter where they're alive. I don't hear you. My students' life matters when they're alive. Say it. Thank you, I'm a teacher, I gotta say that. One of my students got buried this week. I couldn't attend his funeral. I don't attend kids' funerals. Our youth lives matter to me. They matter to us. They matter to us, and they matter to us. I don't attend kids' funerals because my youth lives should not end before my life. I get mad as fuck when I see balloons, when I see hoodies, when I see hashtag. I want to see them get celebrated because of their learning, because of their genius, because of their creativity. Let's celebrate the youth in Ward 7 and 8. They also need uplifting. My babies' lives, they matter to me when they're alive. My babies are frustrated, so they get incarcerated. They get neglected, so they get overprotective over their neighborhood that, like JC says, their mamas are renting it. Crazy. But that's where they feel like they belong. Now, say it again, our kids' life matter to us. I'm talking about the kids worldwide. I'm speaking about educators worldwide. But because God placed me in DC right now, to be specifically and specific, I'm talking about my kids in DC. Black, brown, youth, white, rich, poor, homeless. Yes, they're slower than poor. Homeless, kidnapped, dead. Our youth lives, they matter to us. They matter to them. They matter to me. They matter to the future when they're alive. No one calls my parents about positive shit, one of my kids said to me yesterday. This school shit is whack, said another. I kept chewing my gum while listening. Acting like I was ignoring them. I was not. I like to let them have their moment in a safe space. Señorita Lake's room is a safe space. It's a messy place. It's a I can dream big space. I like to let them express themselves. I love letting them express themselves. All that negative in their life, maybe that way one day, soon, they will empty out the negativity. They will replace that space in their brain with positivity. Teens and twins are hormonal problematic little humans, but we are also problematic big humans. We need to equip them with global knowledge. How is it that our kids live in DC and many kids in Ward 7 and 8 don't even know what an embassy is? Yet, people come in and out of their cities and their community from across the seas, city, states, and different career fields. And this is to our next DC governor. I'm hoping that you don't forget about the little boys and little girls on Ward 7 and 8. The parents that deserve to be taught how to parent their children with love. I hope you get to experience my youth's worth. To the Department of Education, I hope you figure out a way how to measure mutual love and respect, because the kids in the hood try their best. I hope you come to the trenches. I hope you gain their respect. Those kids in the hood want to make it out. They want to travel the world. They want to be celebrated. They want to shine and much more. Our kids' lives matter. My lives matters too. The secondary trauma that I'm exposed to on a daily breaks my heart. It makes me sick. It makes me blue. Because I teach Spanish, I added azul. I want us to come together in June as a city and be honest about the future of these children. I would be shooting, stealing, doing drugs, prostituting myself, flipping a few bags, getting locked up all over again, running away and fighting at school, to name a few things. If the city that I live in had so many resources, but people that make decisions were too scarce to show me those resources, I would want an easier way out. Dying at age 18, dying by age 18 or prior to 18 shouldn't be the only way out. It needs to change because our kid life matters to us when they're alive. So they can become whatever they want, whoever they want. So each of them can teach one of them that their life should matter to them when they're alive, when they are alive. Black lives matter more when they are alive. That's when the change happens. Renacimiento radical means radical renaissance. They need more representation. They need those who are in representation to give them radical reaffirmation because they've been affirmed. Educators, we got this. Can I get a fax? That's a wrap. Maybe I'll wrap. Okay, that's it. I'll just share really quick. My sister's here. Thank you for coming. We are from San Pedro de Macorís in Dominican Republic. We're not DC natives, but we are from a place where we see tourists come in and out of our countries, and we know what it feels like to be from a place where there's so many resources and tourists that come in and out, but it frustrates a lot of our family members that come to live there and know that the world has so many possibilities, but yet you cannot reach them. So I identify a lot with the kids in Ward 7 and 8 because I see that and saw that growing up firsthand, because the Black experience is a global experience. Everywhere in the world, Black people are dealing with this, with issues. They are lacking resources. Sometimes we got our own Black people not giving us the resources because they don't know, or they act like they don't know. So that's it, Señorita Lake. I'm not gonna drop the mic.
All right, give it up one more time for Señorita Lake. Yes. Oh my gosh, so many powerful stories so far tonight. Holding it closer. There we go. Cool. So again, thanks for everyone who shared so far. We got one more person to go up before we call for an open mic. So if any of y'all again are feeling inspired after the people that are gone right now would to sign up and or to come up and do your own story or tell your own story, go ahead. We'd love to hear it, to have you volunteer. In the meantime, you'll be hearing from Candace Davis. Candace Davis is an 11-year veteran educator and students' rights activist who was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. She graduated from HU with a bachelor's degree in human development and psychoeducational studies and a master's degree in early childhood education. She also holds certification in education administration and supervision from Johns Hopkins University. With specific skills in literacy, restorative practices, and classroom management, Candace has served in the following positions. Count them up: early childhood classroom teacher, teacher leader, teacher mentor, social and emotional learning lead, English language arts and social studies curriculum writer, professional development coordinator, instructional behavior management coach, and vice principal. Currently, Candace is developing a nonprofit organization that will provide training and resources to educators who advocate for students and families within underserved communities. She reps wards 6 and 8. Give it up for Candace.
I'm a little nervous. So, just quickly, my last position was a vice principal at Ingenuity Prep Charter School in Ward 8. And so what I've written is in response to that experience. I feel like I'm a little low. Can you hear me? Lord, help me understand. You blessed me to have the heart, passion, and skill set to serve your children. But you didn't prepare me for this. Or did you? How is it that human beings can watch other human beings suffer and not care? How, God? Why did you have me leave something good to send me to this zoo of a school? You led me to believe that this was the place where I would evolve into the leader you called me to be. I was so excited. Now all I remember is feeling traumatized by student experiences and defeated because even as an administrator, my hands were tied. Why would you do that? Every time I walked into the building, I felt darkness, a heavy burden that I couldn't move. Listening to the children scream and cry only made me want to scream and cry. But why, God? I've seen this before. I've been serving students with high needs for over 10 years. Why does this feel differently? I prayed and prayed about this and you didn't do anything. Or did you? If you did, why did you let it go this far? On behalf of the children, I cried out to you, on my knees from the bottom of my heart, and I begged for you to give me direction. I thought you told me to fight, so I did. I identified the problem, provided solutions, and was willing to do whatever needed to be done. When the school's business owners didn't do their part, I spoke up like you wanted, right? But you let them fire me. You know how much pride I took in being an excellent and successful educator. Why would you give them the power to take that from me? You know how much pain that caused. I didn't deserve that. I did what was right. So I didn't accept that either. And I kept crying out to you, looking for direction. But then it only got worse. You allowed my heart to continue to bleed for the students, which wouldn't allow me to give up. And you convicted my spirit about not returning to work, but you didn't tell me how I would pay my bills. You watched me worry and stress and sob and feel embarrassed about not having a job or money and not knowing what to do. You just said fight, so I fought. Lord, I just knew that if I fought like you told me to, doing it the right way, remaining honest and professional and following the processes in place, justice would be served. But it wasn't. Sure, the school was investigated a few times and actually found guilty of violating the law. But why didn't you make sure they paid the consequences they owed? Why did the teachers continue to quit? The parents continued to report malpractice. You watched me spend hours and hours writing testimonies, sending emails, making phone calls, and knocking on doors and hosting meetings with everyone who would listen. And you actually gave me access to everyone. The school's board and donors, the Public Charter School Board, OSSE, State Board of Education, Office of Ombudsman, DC Council, DC Child and Family Services, Parent Advocacy Groups, Office of Special Education Programs, Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, Mayor's Office of African American Services, Mayor's Office of African American Services again, Deputy Mayor of Education Paul Kine, Mayor Bowser, DC Office of Human Rights, U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, Office of Inspector General, and the Office of Attorney General, just to hear them give me the same responses over and over. If they didn't just blatantly dismiss me, they agreed that there was a problem, made a bunch of promises, followed their protocol, and then ghosted me. But you still wouldn't let me stop. Why, God? After a year passed with no resolution, you watched my anxiety and depression take over, and you did nothing. Or did you? I just heard you say keep fighting, so I kept fighting, as impossible as it felt. Once I realized the laws are truly designed to protect the business of public education more than the children being served, the only next step was to file a lawsuit. But you didn't warn me about the emotional roller coaster I would get on when I started the legal process. You didn't tell me that most lawyers wouldn't even consider my case, and that I wouldn't be able to afford those who would. You didn't tell me what it would feel like to have my reputation on the line with lies. You didn't tell me that the paperwork and wait time would drown me. You didn't tell me how lonely I would feel when not being allowed to speak about the process. Then when I could do no more, you watched me wait and pray and wait and pray and wait and pray for months with no answer. When the school finally folded and requested for mediation, you knew that I did not want to settle. You knew that a win for me meant that justice was served for students. So that's what I told them. Yet, you waited for the judge to tell me that my employment case wouldn't legally allow for me to advocate for students the way I wanted, and that settling was inevitable. But I didn't sacrifice my life for students just for this to end up being about money. Why did you do this to me, God? You took me away from everything I knew, all that made me who I was and made me fight for over 2 years just to settle? Okay, you told me to settle, so I did. But I don't accept that as a resolution. This fight is not over. It's just gotten bigger. So now, I'm telling you, God, that I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep fighting. Maybe that's what this was all about all along. You showed me the truth about the systems by allowing me to experience it from the beginning to the end for myself. Looking back, I now see how you provided and protected and loved me every step of the way. Even when I allowed fear to control my mind, you were in control of my fear. When I didn't always say and do things perfectly, you stopped it. You stepped in and made it work for my good. You literally gave me the words to say and actions to take, which not only blew my mind, but opened my heart and eyes to what you called me to do in this world. Thank you, Lord. According to your word, Romans 12:2, the Apostle Paul said, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I understand now, God. You taught me to not conform to this corrupt public education system any longer. And that process renewed my mind and has given me new purpose. I now find pride in doing what is uncomfortable, unusual, and deemed impossible. So Lord, you have all of me. I trust you with no more why questions. Use me as you see fit. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in public education as it is in heaven. Amen.
Awesome. Give it up one more time, Charlotte. Give it up one more time for Jenkins. That was awesome. I know you said you started off nervous, but then Rita, that was powerful. That was great. Oh my gosh, yes. Good deal. So, anybody feeling brave? Anybody feeling bold? Want to tell their story that did not get a chance to sign up before the event? I see somebody getting volunteers. Joe, started on the list. Yeah. A little negotiation happening. I wish I were a little bit more charming. I could like pass the time better. Cool. Anybody else that is? Ooh, I see a hand. I'm gonna take advantage of that. Yes, welcome. Introduce yourself to the crowd. We're lovely. I mean, I think we've been pretty good so far. So I'm gonna just pass it off and let you do your thing.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Quabila Huddleston, she, her pronouns. I work at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, so the hat that I'm wearing is more like an education policy analyst. Before I started working at DCFPI, I was in Baltimore City, working with mainly high schoolers who are my favorite, in an after school and out of school setting. And I really miss working with them, but I've always been like extremely spoken out about like anti-blackness, racism, and what I was seeing manifest in that space. I was like, all right, I gotta do something to change the policies, because like this is ridiculous, right? And I just want to say, like, I really respect Black educators because it is not easy. The education system is inherently anti-Black, from the curriculum to everything. And so I just really appreciate that you all are like continuing to fight that fight, because even in my out of school time space, I was like, wait, what are we doing? You know? So back in 2017, I wrote this like article on Medium titled "The Inconvenient Truth of Education Policy Reform." So I'm gonna read that. That's my story tonight. The truth will set us free, but first it will make us uncomfortable. Several weeks into my education policy graduate courses, I'm bluntly reminded of when, where, how, and why I enter the education policy debate. Black, female, and woke as ever, I am both incensed and inspired to continue the fight to assert my voice in the decades-old conversation about educational inequity. Incensed because weekly class readings remind me of the racist, classist, and sexist origins of the traditional American education system. Inspired because after every class, my classmate and I, another passionate, race-conscious Black woman, huddle to discuss our qualms and quibbles with the current state of our education system and the direction in which we think it should be headed. It's no secret that the education system is broken. I say broken loosely because historically the system was designed to work for white, mostly male, and mostly wealthy folks. And on a much deeper level, it was created to preserve and advance the cultural dispositions, knowledge, background, and norms of these white wealthy males. So what does all of this mean? In short, the former American education system was, is, and will inevitably continue to be rife with disparities until we reconcile our past with the present. This is the inconvenient truth of education policy reform. I know this to be true because despite the Supreme Court of the United States determining that separate but equal schooling is unconstitutional some 60 years ago, and the countless other efforts made by civil and human rights activists to level the educational playing field, our education system remains separate and very unequal. Collectively, Black and Latinx children, and I wrote this and I'm cringing because I don't like this language anymore, but Black and Latinx children lag behind their white classmates in academic achievement, graduation, and higher educational attainment. Making matters worse, low-income Black and Latinx children across major cities are being warehoused into crumbling buildings with shoddy infrastructures, under-resourced classrooms and libraries, and school administration and faculty who often lack the cultural competency to lead, discipline, and teach in culturally responsive ways. Broadly speaking, local and state officials have responded to the persistence of urban school disparities with education-centered policy solutions, such as bolstering teacher/school accountability, haphazardly emphasizing standardized testing to demonstrate improvements, integrating schools through busing, though recent research shows school segregation persists, and increasing per pupil expenditures. Unfortunately, these policies and others fail to account for the nuances that contextualize the inequities seen in poor urban schools. Nuances that deserve intellectual might and honesty if we are to bring about transformative change. This is when, where, how, and why I enter. I enter now because after having read a litany of academic journal articles written by economists to sociologists to critical race theorists and historians, I am convinced that the nation will continue to ineffectually address racial inequities in education. Conversations on the Black-white achievement gap remain perpetually circular, with stakeholders every so often choosing to dedicate the human and financial capital needed to level the educational playing field. Much of the conversations on how to solve the racial and economic disparities between Black and white children are couched in politically correct language, void of uncomfortable yet honest discussions about the way racist ideologies within education policy practices reproduce and perpetuate social inequity. Plain and simple, the results we are getting in the 21st century reflect a system fundamentally unchanged. Further, the results unequivocally reflect the failure of other policy sectors. Research shows that school segregation persists despite an ever-diversifying nation. Looking at residential patterns across cities, however, shows that our neighborhoods continue to be segregated as well, markedly along racial and class lines. Segregated residential patterns can largely be explained by the growing racial wealth divide. A recently published report by the Corporation for Enterprise Development found that over the last 30 years, the average wealth of white families has grown 3 and 1.2 times the rate of Black and Latino or Latinx households respectively, and the shrinking availability of affordable housing options. So this is the bottom line. The failure to deliberately address how racism and racist ideology shape education policy ultimately makes the realization of equity and equality unattainable. Similarly, education-centric policy efforts alone won't stop or undo the damages of systemic inequality and the shortcomings of other policy sectors. If we want not only different but better results, we can no longer afford to be complicit in a separate and unequal educational system. We must have the will and intentionality to confront the inconvenient truth. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else feeling called to the mic? Going once. Going twice? All right, so I'll leave it at that for now. Just to let you know, we got some appetizers in the back. You'll see there are 2 different types of sambosas. One of them is veggie, so that's lentils in there, and the other is beef. So if you're feeling a little hungry, got you back there, plates and everything. Do you want to introduce our next speaker? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is a wonderful evening, a great opportunity where we're having real conversation about policy matters, about education in the District of Columbia, specifically about African American young boys and girls and African American teachers as well. So we really want to thank EmpowerEd for this opportunity to come and have this real conversation. It's an important conversation. It needs to be happening across the city. It's important that advocacy groups like EmpowerEd who recognize inequities and want to address them and provide opportunities for people of color, teachers of color, etc., to voice where we are, to make our voices heard in a larger setting is really important. So let's give it up here for EmpowerEd. Come on, give it up, EmpowerEd. All right, so, and
In DC Area Educators for Social Justice. And
absolutely.
Thank you.
Woo, what a partnership, woo! So it gives me great pleasure to bring up the next speaker. I refer to him as Joyful Josh. It's probably the first time he's heard me say that. Josh M. Jenkins was born and raised in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and attended the great Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and studied piano, continuing his education at Temple University in Philadelphia with an EM in piano performance and a double major in Spanish. He currently works as a musician. He is absolutely fantastic and phenomenal. I was hoping he would give us a little musical interlude tonight, but maybe not, no instrument. And he's a Spanish teacher as well at his alma mater, Duke Ellington. So let's give it up for Josh as he heads up. And he represents Ward 2. Oh, Josh.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Dubose again for inviting me to this lovely event. The things that people have been saying have been absolutely incredible. And I'm really inspired by the stuff that I've heard so far. So can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, cool. So yes, as Ms. Dubose said, I'm a Spanish teacher. I actually have not been a teacher for very long, but the things that I've been doing and during this process of teaching, I really, really, really love what I do right now. I have discovered a new passion for something that I never even knew that I had before through doing this. So in addition to being an educator, by trade and by training, I am a musician. As Mr. Bo said, I went to Ellington School of the Arts, which is where I'm currently teaching Spanish right now. But it was through making the connection between playing music and speaking Spanish that I think is gonna bring me to my point that I want to make in this. In 2017, back in 2017, I took a trip to Cuba. I had the great opportunity to travel to that place. And when I went there first for musical purposes, to take some lessons, because for a long time I've been really enamored, I've been really fascinated, I've been really in love with Caribbean music of all kinds. But it was around that time, I mean, I grew up and I had a background in playing jazz, and through that I kind of discovered Latin jazz, and then I was able to travel a little bit and discover and take lessons from kind of the source of that music. But it was in that process that I went there and I, almost on accident, took this kind of side journey into realizing that really Spanish was at the core of what opened up my abilities to learn. And so this was what I took back to the classroom. But what really was the spark for me was when I went there and I took lessons in this thing called tambores bata, which I discovered when I was in Cuba. And so you said you were from the Dominican Republic. I mean, it's something that, yes, people from, you know, any kind of Afro-Latino background will probably know about, these kind of things that are really common to especially the Caribbean areas of Spanish-speaking countries. There's people from the African diaspora who have musical traditions and religious traditions, linguistic traditions that survive in many, many different ways. And so tambores bata are like 3 hourglass-shaped drums, at least the way it's played in Cuba, that are kind of the direct descendants of this really, really, really beautiful, incredible, multifaceted musical tradition of the Yoruba people of Southwest Nigeria. And so I only discovered this by going to Cuba, and so finding kind of this diasporic musical tradition that was associated with that. So through that, I was kind of opened up this Pandora's box of me discovering all of this African diaspora, the beauty of the culture and music and poetry and artistic expression that came from that. But none of that would have happened if I had not originally had an interest in learning Spanish, and this is actually what I bring to my students when I'm teaching Spanish. Because when I look at my classroom at Untitled School of the Arts, I see students who come from Dominican backgrounds, who come from Cuban backgrounds, who come from, people come from all over the world. But when it comes to Latin America, I can really associate heavily with those students that come from Venezuela, Colombia, from Dominican Republic and Cuba, as well as students whose parents come from Nigeria and from the Congo and from Haiti and from all these places. I'm able to really spread my passion for what ignited my interest in learning Spanish in the first place with them. And what I want to get to is this breaking down of barriers between different cultures, because the separation between all these different traditions is really just an illusion, and I didn't realize that until I learned Spanish and took to learn something else, to learn about all these musical traditions. So what I want to share with them, I love teaching Spanish because it touches on so many aspects of so many things in society and culture. It touches on history, it touches on society as a whole, it touches on art, and at the Untitled School of the Arts, talking about all those things really, really enables me to connect with the students, whatever it is that they study. So I'm able to use Spanish to speak to them about, where did I want to go with this? This is the thing about coming up with this off the top. I kind of want to organize and structure the things that I want to say. Thank you. I'm able to teach them history. That's the biggest thing. When it comes to the history that's associated with the speaking of Spanish, it allows me to really touch on the history of colonial oppression and the history of resistance to colonial oppression and the effects of colonial oppression to this day. I'm able to talk about the common shared experiences that many people from different countries and different backgrounds have, and the things that really unite us together. Because people don't realize that just because you might speak differently, it does not mean that you have different experiences or different backgrounds. You can be a lot closer than you think. And Senorita, you mentioned DC being a place where a lot of tourists come, and Dominican Republic being a place that a lot of tourists come. I think those similarities go really, really deep, and I love what you said there. That resonated with me because DC and Dominican Republic, what they have in common is that they are both colonies, and that they are both treated by their colonizers as resources to be exploited. So wealth is extracted from those areas without much of a care for the well-being of its citizens. And so that's a situation that I can really shed light on through teaching Spanish, because the only reason that Spanish is spoken in so many parts of the world is because a European country spread it there, against the will of many people. So I'm able to touch on all those things. And when it comes to showing people the beauty of their own culture, I love doing that through Spanish as well. So there's something to offer for the people who speak Spanish and who have that kind of heritage in their families in the classroom, because then they're able to learn more about themselves. And this is not just Spanish. I love doing this with students of different backgrounds as well. For example, there's many Ethiopian students at Ellington as well. And I love encouraging them on my board to kind of write their names in Amharic and to talk about Amharic and to have them be proud of their own culture and heritage that they come from. Because that's so important. I see speakers of Spanish who sometimes are a little bit shy to speak, like native speakers who are not my students, and I might have them during like advisory. They come into my room and I want them to be proud of where they come from and be proud of what makes them different, because it's through that they're able to really teach people about themselves and about what actually unites them. That difference itself is really just an illusion. So it was created by the colonizing oppressor in order to try to keep people apart. So we all know the age-old tactic of divide and conquer. If you look at like a linguistic map or a political map of Africa or of many different places around the world that have been colonized, it looks like Tower of Babel type situation, where people are not really able to communicate with each other. So people have more information about what happened in the metropole than in the colonizing country than what's happening in their neighboring country. Just an example, like I say, maybe Nigeria knowing more about what's going on in London than what's going on in neighboring Cameroon because of the linguistic separation between them. So teaching language, to me, I didn't know before I studied music so much and before I started teaching at Ellington, how much of a revolutionary act it really is, because I'm able to really break down those barriers and to teach people what unites them more than what keeps them apart. So it's not just Spanish, it goes way beyond that, because again, those different things that are used to divide people, they come in many forms. And so Spanish is just one of them. I love opening people's eyes to this fact and to what they have in common with other people who are in their situation. Because that's when you stop having such a defeatist mentality in response to oppression. When you think it's just you can get much more depressed about that and say the whole world is out to get just me and it's just me against everybody else. But when you see other people who have been through a similar situation to you and what you've been through, then you say, okay, I can talk to this person and I can unite with them, and then together we can kind of overcome this and transcend this experience that we've been through. But that's only through learning about each other's culture, and I love doing that through Spanish. And so, like, my experience with bata drums from Nigeria, that's just me, that's my personal experience, and I love sharing that passion and that discovery with my students. I love talking about those kind of cultures that we can touch on through learning Spanish at any given opportunity, because then I'm able to share what makes me passionate about it. They can connect what makes them passionate about it, whether that's from their heritage or from their art form that they study at Ellington, whatever it is. So, that's pretty much my spiel. And I think I've been going over the time, right? Can I get on time? Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for sharing. That was great. Yeah, off the cuff, man. That was great. Cool. So before I hand it back to Gabrielle, just wanted to encourage you all to be supporting this Black-owned business by buying more drinks, more food, all that. We got you some appetizers, but we chose this location for a reason, and want to uplift the diaspora and this Black-owned business in general through supporting them with this event. So please continue supporting, not just with your presence here, but also in every way that you can. So thank you for that. And I'm going to pass it back to Gabrielle. Yeah, good timing.
My turn, I'm back. So let's give it up, everybody, for DC Area Educators for Social Justice, who's co-sponsoring this event tonight. We really are very excited and thrilled. This is an extension of Black History Month. It's a great opportunity for us to come together and lift our voices and raise our voices for excellent causes. We are really learning a lot tonight, aren't we? Let's give the speakers another hand, because those that come up, let's talk and share their story. And so glad now to bring up our next speaker, who I refer to as at Duke Ellington. He's also at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. He's our resident restorative justice guru. When things are happening in the building, we need somebody that has like a CIA covert operation in mind in order to solve and resolve an issue. We all say, where's Mr. J? He has the answer. He is the answer. So I'm talking about Jeffrey Christopher Johnson. Mr. J, as we call him, has worked with young people in and out of school settings since he was 19. He's taught kids with behavioral handicaps in partial hospitalization settings for 8 years, at a dojo for 10 years, and at Ellington for 5 years. Mr. J has never worked in a mainstream setting.
I can, and it forces me to think on my feet all the time. But what I worry about is that if I give them a distorted view of things, then they go into the world with a distorted view, and then that becomes dysfunction. And you don't know how deep that dysfunction can go. And I feel like we were a generation. I'm 42, so graduated high school in '97. I feel like our generation was BS to a lot. We were told we could change the world. All we needed was a degree. All we had to do was hold hands and kumbaya, and it was all going to be fine. And all of that was nonsense. And it was nonsense not because our parents were trying to lie or our teachers were trying to lie. It was just what we were told. So that's what we believe. So don't BS them. So I don't BS them about the need to understand your money. I'll tell the kids, if you're not the master of your money, you'll be the slave of it. Or I don't want you to look at this experience as you're just going to high school. This is your education and your certification. Your certification is for your employment. Your education is for you. That's what you're going to carry on for years and years and years. I think probably the most difficult lesson to learn in the course of all of this is to be vulnerable. So when I came to Ellington, I had my own fair share of baggage, and I'm transparent about these things with the kids and with my peers as well, because I think it's a weird thing in our culture where we all try to pretend that we're stoically riding this out, and the truth is everybody's dealing with all their stuff. And if we're just honest about that, we can be constructive and move forward. I always feel like it's really silly for us to pretend that we got it together. So I just tell the kids flat out, like, it's an illusion. Nobody has it together. The adults are just overgrown children. In any case, so when I first came to Ellington, like I said, I had my own personal baggage. And so, I was coming off of, and I'm not joking, this is because my throat is dry from all day long talking to parents at parent-teacher conferences. But I was dealing with a lot of grief from a mother who had passed away, from a grandmother who was laid up in a nursing home due to a major stroke. We had lost the house that I grew up in. It was just a whole lot that I was carrying into Ellington. And that's one of the things I think we as educators have to remember, that we're carrying a bunch of stuff in with regard to with our own lives that is going to color how we're dealing with these kids. So, of course, that grief was stuff that I had never really openly talked about. And then one of my students, it was, if anybody, I think you remember Purnell, and I'll just leave it at, you remember Purnell. His mother passed away right before Thanksgiving. And I knew at that point that I was like, well, I can't pretend like I don't have experience with this, because this kid's gonna need to get some kind of guidance to deal with this. He's in high school. I had to deal with it at 30, which was bad enough, but he's 15. So I had to get open, which meant I had to feel some stuff that I had pressed way down there, but I had to, because this wasn't about me. This is about this kid having a chance to deal with all of this madness and this grief. I mean, it was a point where he thought he was going to have to move away. He thought he was going to lose being in the school, really enjoyed being in the school. So you just have to talk him through that stuff, and I had to open up. So, and that was also a class that I think it was, they loved me so much that like you had to stop thinking anything negative about what you're doing. So it's like, you know, all the imposter syndrome stuff, it was like, like when I say I got to listen to the kids as part of the vulnerability piece. So if they're saying, you know, I had a kid the other day say, you know, Mr. J, I never liked history class before, I like it now. Or, you know, I related to mother today, excuse me, I'm not choking up, I have a dry throat. I just want to explain that I am sensitive, I am vulnerable, but I don't cry like that. But I had related to her that I was like, you know, I think your kid's doing great, she's got good grades, she's, you know, participates well. The only thing I want her to do is just to have some confidence behind that, because I feel like she needs to own that. Like she's got a beautiful mind, she's got a beautiful heart, she needs to just go forward with that. And so I showed her this, and I'm not gonna try to show it to everybody, I just need to see it so I can read it correctly. I got a dry erase board that some kids have put pictures up, and there's like a weird picture of me as a turtle with a human head. But besides that, she wrote a quote on there, this young lady, she wrote, and just kind of out of nowhere, she wrote, I know my worth and what type of love I deserve. And I told her mother that, and I showed it to her. And her mom was doing hair at the moment, stepped away from it, sat down. I thought she was doing that just to kind of get a moment to talk to me, and she just broke down right then. And I found out that, you know, she had lost a younger brother like a couple years ago, and just all types of stuff. So it was one of these things where it's like, I'm getting more of this insight because I was willing to listen and willing to be vulnerable, and I think y'all get the point of that. And I think I'm maybe just share one last little, this is the one that, this is probably the biggest difficulty, is learning to sit with discomfort. So, like as a cis hetero male, I got mostly women friends, and so of course I hear lots and lots and lots of horrific stories of things that they've gone through. So that means I have to sit there and just be uncomfortable as they're talking to me about this stuff and accept that what I'm hearing is their truth. And so it's the same thing with our students, because I grew up in a suburb outside of Cleveland called Beechwood, where we were kind of segregated into our own little area, and it was pretty dope that way. I know it sounds really screwed up, but it's the truth. And I had like an ideal, you know, elementary and high school experience, and it was totally different than what all my students deal with. And so I've had to sit and listen to a lot of painful stories so that I can understand where people are coming from, so that I don't have to second guess the next kid that's coming through the door with the same kind of issues. So, you know, my best example of that is with one student in particular who is a trans boy. He's my work son. He is a kid who had emailed me because he was just having a lot of, this is right when the pandemic had started, we were all at home. He sent me a long, depressed email at like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. So I talked to my peers, what do y'all think I should do? I think I sent him an email the next day, like, if you want to talk, we'll figure it out, you know, how we can do it. Got the suggestion from a coworker to start some Zoom sessions, so we were doing that for the whole time we were all at home. So I would be on Zoom with him for 2 days a week. And so just to kind of hear him describe the fear that he has to deal with, and the abuse that he has already suffered through, and other things that are just impossible for me to fathom and that are excruciating to hear, but I have to listen to it because it ain't gonna just be this kid, it's gonna be more kids coming after that. So I guess that's really all I gotta share tonight. I hope that that was, you know, something of value for y'all. Peace.
So don't leave Gavin, put him on the spot, So because what we hear you talking about, and I know you are an advocate for restorative justice. And so oftentimes in the classroom as teachers, we recognize and realize our students who are like at war within themselves, like really at war within themselves. So what is maybe a couple of steps or last words you would leave with us as educators who really want to help our students when we recognize and see those things, because they can't even open up to curriculum until they are open and ready to learn. And oftentimes, especially with the pandemic and life, et cetera, there's a war going on inside of them. We don't really have the tools all the times we need as educators to help that child like begin to trust themselves with learning. So what do we do?
Well, I could never give one answer that I think would adequately deal with that. I think the best thing that I can say is generally my philosophy is I just try to leave the door open. So I just try to make space for whoever to come to me with whatever. I'm also saying that knowing that I have had 8 years of experience in mental health, so it's like I saw and dealt with things that are not within the purview of most people's educational experiences, but so I have a pretty wide bandwidth for pretty heavy, pretty deep, and sometimes pretty dark stuff. So, but I think really we have to make some kind of peace with ourselves because, like I said, we're taking our own issues into the classroom. So you have to know that if you haven't dealt with your stuff, you're not going to have the emotional capacity to deal with theirs. So it's like, you know, I'm seeing a therapist, I'm working out every day, I'm doing everything I can to try to maintain my health, because if I don't, then I can't bear the weight that they're going to put on me. Because we're not, I think it's irrational for us to pretend that as teachers it's just, and we all know it's not just some paradise situation where I'm just rescuing the kids. Like, this is, we're bearing weight. So be honest about the weight you're bearing and confront it. I got a hand, I'm sorry.
I have to ask you a question. So, when I work with my kids, right, mostly black and brown, I come from a lot of trauma.
From what, I'm sorry?
Trauma.
Okay.
I come from a lot of trauma, so when I work with my kids, I always try to, like, they bring me a lot, right? And I'm trying to learn how to, like, set that boundary, but also, like, you checking in with somebody that, like, but I'm not going to just let you check in. Like, I need to equip you. So when you leave my classroom, whatever word or weapon comes against you, I need you to know how to, like, block it. So what do you say? Like, what's your go-to phrase to a teenager that's dealing with everything? Like, so they can, I don't know how to say it. So they cannot, like, I know you just said something, like, we're not rescuing them. Like, because when I was talking, I said, we don't need to reaffirm them. They already got that in them. So, like, I've been searching for a go-to phrase to, like, have them, like, it's gonna happen.
You know, I think that I think I would hesitate to give you something that I would say, because what I can say has an effect because of relationship. So I think more than anything, we have to focus on relationship with kids and take time to make conversation about whatever. I think a lot of times we're so caught up in the producing driven type of culture that we're so addicted to, you got to get back on your work and you got to get this read and you have to do this and you have to do that. And we're not remembering that they are human beings and they do want to talk to you. So it's like, we have to make sure that we're building that relationship more than anything. And then so when I do say something, I could pull all kinds of stuff out of the ether and it will probably work only because I have a relationship. So I wish I could give you like a, here's what you should say, but like, I'm willing to bet there are things that you could get away with saying to your students that I would not get away with saying to your students, because you have a different relationship with them, and that's your value. That's, you know, I could not bring what you bring. So it has to be about relationship. And then, you know, once you got that established, you can say all kinds of stuff to get them to come back around. But it's got to be relationship first.
Did you teach the parents how to be restorative?
Oh, no. That's a whole evening. That's a whole other evening.
Yeah, I'm I mean, all I can say to that is, I try. If you'll forgive me, I guess the thing that I'll say is not really a direct answer to that. It's more like I realize that while I'm not actually a parent, that is the role that I'm fitting while I'm there. They're spending a lot of time with me per week, and then the most important thing that I try to remember is they're literally watching and observing and listening to every single thing that I do. I mean, they can remember what I wore on Tuesday, and I don't remember what I wore on Tuesday. So I just remember that whatever their situation might have been, I have to be the reasonable adult. I have to be the grown-up, because, you know, we know that sometimes we got to deal with grown-ups that ain't grown-ups. And that's probably the best thing I can say. That I don't have any better advice than that. So.
Do you think your next mayor should invest in
Restorative justice.
justice in the community and in the household?
Oh.
Do you think that's our next mayor?
I think when we try to one size fits all it's not going to work. I think whatever is needed is like multi-tiered. It's like these kids need everything from adequate housing and food and making sure that, you know, their health is okay and they can talk to a therapist, and, you know, and then all the way down to you'll need some kind of restorative justice thing. But I've also experienced people kind of treating that type of framework as something prescriptive. So it's like if event A happens, then I'll just insert behavior B and then I will have result C. And there's nothing about that. You have to just accept the chaos. That's part of dealing with all this. You know, we got to accept that it's just chaos. But I think that you need there's a laundry list of things that these kids need. And it's one of the reasons why I don't believe that the idea of simply having like a regular educational school, like every school is just regular, I find that inherently problematic. They have all these other needs that we're not often very equipped to deal with. So, and I come from schools that were focused specifically on behavior, and we sent kids to go work, on cars at a vocational place, and then another kid was an athlete, so he went to Ginn Academy. It was an all-boys school for sports. Then, we're at a school for the arts. I've taught at a dojo. I've been at a nature center. It doesn't make sense for us to be like, everybody's going to get the same thing, but we're going to get something special out of somebody. But the somebody is only going to be the person with the access. So I really look at it. And it makes me think about this, and I'm sorry that I feel like I am rambling at this point, sorry. But one of the thoughts that has struck me really since, and I hate to use this as the touching point, because it's like cliche when people do this about major events, but around the time of George Floyd's murder, we had a lot of the demonstrations or riots, depending on where it was and what was happening. I'm not going to get into that, but I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine and saying to her, I'm not going to tell black folks what to do right now, because we've been told what to do for hundreds of years, and we never really have an opportunity to just do what we need to go do. And I look at our kids in a certain sense the same way. I'm not giving them the same free range thing, because they ain't adults and they do need to be reined in. But I am still saying, like, I'm not trying to dictate what you become. And I'm not trying to fence you into what I think you need to be. I need to give you a lot of space to be what you are, because that's going to be the best thing for you, and then that's going to give me the best behavior and academic success. So it's like, so much of this, like I said, sitting with discomfort, making sure to be vulnerable, listening to what's going on, and it ain't going to be easy. You're going to eat a lot of pain that way. So you also have to figure out how you're going to take care of yourself with all that, and you have to figure out what is your also long-term game plan and goal, because it can't just be, I'm living for the classroom, because the classroom can be a source of so much stress and so much heartache. So it's like, I think this conversation around education is so much more complex than American culture can really hold. And it's the fact that I've told my students, it was a few weeks ago, and I don't know what their situation now is, but I remember in New Mexico they had called in the National Guard to substitute for the schools over there. And I'm like, you call in the National Guard when it's an emergency. And so I'm like, y'all do realize that's a national crisis that we have in our hands. It really is in an emergency. It's heading towards disaster. We're just not talking about it yet. That means that we literally have no choice but to see this very, very differently, and have what used to be referred to in the services in the school that I worked at in Cleveland was like wraparound services, but it has to be like a wraparound. It's like a cosmos you got to put these kids in. So I'm also asking for us to do too much. So, all right, I'm gonna shut up now. Peace, y'all.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. J. We are really, really learning a lot. This is fantastic conversation. I think I have the pleasure of bringing up our last speaker for the evening, Mr. Adji Payton. You can start to make your way down, sir. He is a fellow at EmpowerEd. Adji, born and raised in Florida, did his undergraduate work at UCF, bachelor's in business administration and finance. Adji originally moved to DC in 2011 for government work. However, he later transitioned to education in 2015 after learning about graduation rates and his concerns there. Currently, Adji is teaching in Ward 4, and he has been teaching now for 7 years. Take it away, Mr. Payton. The floor is yours.
Wow, to be closing. I just want to say, before I even start today, I want to thank the educators that came before me, the current educators that are in the fold, and the ones that are going to come after me, because there's so much work that we have to do. I wrote something on my phone, but before I even say that, when I became a teacher, I didn't know what this journey was going to be like. I didn't know I was going to become a teacher. If you had asked me when I left Florida and moved to DC if I was going to become a teacher, I would have told you hell no. But now that I am, I do feel like so much reward and so much impact. And I just, even in being in this environment, every environment is everything is a teachable moment. From just, thank you for saying your words about creativity and just staying true to DC. I love DC. I feel like DC made me a better man, and also taught me a lot about myself. And so I'm gonna get straight to it. The title of my notes is called The Journey, and I call it The Journey because I don't tell a lot of people my story, but I moved to DC in 2011. I had a friend who stayed here. He was in the Navy at the time. He got based here, and I was back home. I had moved back home in Bradenton, Florida, if anybody knows where that's at, near Tampa. I didn't have any money after undergrad. And my friend, he came home for a weekend, and I told him, I said, Sean, I gotta leave from this place. And if anybody's ever been to Florida, it's just not, and I'm just keeping it a buck, it's not a place for Black professionals. And moving here, I felt empowered. I felt as a Black man that I could take the least that I had and make so much more. I never thought that I would be staying in Northwest DC, growing up in Bradenton, growing up in poverty. Mother being, I was homeless. I wasn't technically homeless because I had a roof, but at a point in time in my life, my family had to stay with somebody else. So that's considered homeless if you know what MKV is. And so to now have my own foundation, to only building my own legacy, I'm just proud of that. And I just thank everybody and whoever attributed to that. So this is the journey. So to me, this hasn't been the easiest journey, but it's been rewarding. The strife of dealing with the inequalities that exist in our educational system, they live with us every day. I became an educator to evoke change, to empower the young generation of color, and to rise above every obstacle that has been thrown my way. Each year, I strive to rise above all odds, and while each step may seem small, the impact is monumental. What would I like to see in the future is a world where education is truly equitable. Equitable means students of color receive resources that their counterparts have access to. Equitable means students of color and their families receive adequate mental health resources. Equitable means having community outreach programs that give students of color avenues that help build their futures. I can go on and on about inequality, but I want to speak about the state of teaching now. And this is for all my educators in the room. Year after year, we have to go through leaps and bounds, and every time we rise to the occasion. And moving forward, I think it's time to amplify our position, keep rising to the occasion, and continue to be badass, phenomenal people that we are. I'm gonna leave on this note. Each day is a journey. Each moment is it's cherishable because we don't know what we're gonna step into. And as I continue this journey, I don't know. I'm kind of figuring out myself and where I'm at. I'm kind of in a crossroads with teaching right now because I feel like people have said this enough. We're not appreciated enough. Even through a pandemic, we have to teach. And while people get to sit at home, we had to sit and go through classrooms or make things work online and do all these different things. But when do people ask us what we need? That's the biggest part of this journey. We need stuff. We need mental health resources. We need classroom, we need support. It's a lot of teachers that are getting beat down. And thank you for sharing your journey earlier. There's just so much that goes on in public schools and charter schools, and people get ostracized, and it's not good. It doesn't make people feel good, and it's just, my heart goes out to you. Thank you for sharing earlier. And so as we in this day, I hope that everybody take away from this beautiful moment that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I don't know how it's going to get done. It's going to get done somehow, and continue to amplify your voice, continue to be the change, but also continue to live in your truth. Live organically and don't let anybody disguise that. So thank you guys for this moment. I don't know who's taking the mic. I'm not a host. Not today.
Awesome, thank you. I'm from Florida, so I know it all very well. Northeast, Jacksonville. What? Yes! When you said Florida, I was gonna do walk home, not gonna lie. Okay. I might still do it within the night. Okay, it's fine. Cool. So, thank you all so much for sharing your stories, for being great listeners. To people as they share their stories, let this inspire you to continue to amplify your voices as you just imparted on us with. Again, I'm Vanessa Williams. I'm the program manager for DC Area Educators for Local Justice. This was originally an event that Scott and I started planning months ago. It was originally going to fall during something called the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, right? So we know for sure that uplifting Black stories, Black people, Black lives, Black livelihood, all that is important all year long, right? And not just all year, but all of our lives. We help organize and help coordinate every year a week of action where we at least have on that calendar every year be talking about the 13 guiding principles and some national demands to help make the schooling experience for educators, for students, for family members, for communities, all of that, to be better than it is right now, because we know we've been robbed, right? This is one of the pieces that we wanted to have with EmpowerEd to be really centering Black voices. And again, of course, we love our students, we love our babies, but we also wanted to have a space for Black educators to be like, listen to us, right? We know what we're doing. Get out the way, right? As Tiffany said, right? Wanted to impart that with you all. I know Gabrielle wanted to talk a little bit too about some empowered. No, I thought it was. This is why I don't. Before we totally wrap things up, I know we want to get a photograph with all of the storytellers before the night is over. So I'm going to pass it off to Scott before I say anything else wrong.
All right, thank y'all. We're going to wrap up, but last couple announcements. First of all, thank y'all for coming out. The stories were so powerful this evening, and I hope you all have a chance to talk to each other, to connect to each other, to meet folks you haven't met before, and you continue these relationships. We have some more drink tickets, so if you were a storyteller and you want another drink, especially the storytellers, we got some more up here for you. We have only other thing I wanted to announce is that on April 23rd, we're going to do our Teacher Solutions Summit. And the goal of this is that any educator, not just those who are involved already, any educator will send out something after this, but you can just pose a problem and your solution to it. And we think it's going to be at MLK Library, at the new conference center that they have there. And you just make a poster board presentation of this is my problem, this is my proof, this is my solution, this is what you can do about it. And it'll be kind of a gallery of educators' solutions that folks can come and explore and talk to you about some of the things you talked about tonight and about any issue that matters to you in education. So put a plug for that, and then you can sign up for that and join us again, hopefully late April. I want to get all the storytellers up here before we close, take a picture with all of you, and I hope you guys stay, have some more drinks, and talk to each other. If you're a storyteller, come join me up here. Take this off.